Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of From Boots to Suits Life After Military, the podcast that is dedicated to all those servicemen and women who have served our country that are going through the journey, this often complex journey of transitioning from the military to the civilian world. I've got a special guest for you today. I have Mr. Joe Jeffrey, 21 years in the Army, retired, 3 combat tours, 2 in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan, who has so much knowledge in the field of that transition, but has a story to tell as well. Welcome to the show, Joe. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, John.
We've had the opportunity to talk a little bit, over the last, the last week and a half, and you are just a plethora of knowledge up there, and you have so much insights and so many good things that, different programs and different things like that. But before we even get there, tell the audience who you are. Give us a little bit of your backstory, your time in the military and kind of what that transition looked like for you, and we'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, I joined the Army, became a petroleum supply specialist in 92 Fox. I went to Germany immediately. I had a pregnant wife at home. She said, "You're going to join, you're going to go overseas, you're going to deploy to war." No, that's not going to happen. Joined the Army, got stationed overseas. She got there with our newborn daughter, and I was in the field back to back to back in training for hazmat awareness, hazardous waste and materials. Being a fueler doesn't mean just being a fueler. You're doing all the hazardous materials, getting it on the plane, so doing all those trainings as well. And then deployed for 15 months. So did that, and I'd planned to get out. I was doing 4 years and I was done. I went to see, me and my career counselor did not get along. I told him, "Don't talk to me, I'm done." There was an up and coming guy that wanted to become a career counselor, so he wanted to talk to me. And basically, he wanted the help so he could do the counseling, so he could show that he deserves to be a career counselor. And all he said to me was, "Got it. You're leaving with your wife and kid, going back to Iowa, living in your in-laws' basement, and going to college." And he turned and walked away. I re-enlisted for 4 years, needs of the Army immediately the next day. I got orders to corporal recruiting duty, and I went back to Iowa, where I'm from, and I did recruiting for 2 years, 2.5 years there. And I realized why I joined the Army, to get away from the small town where I was living, and I wasn't prepared to get out. And that was the best first decision I had, was not getting out at the first time. Then I wanted to help everybody. I wanted to help soldiers. I wanted to help service members. As a recruiter for 2.5 years, helping them make their lives out of my hometown of Iowa, I ended up applying to become a career counselor. So I did career counseling for my last 11 years. Like you said, I deployed twice to Iraq, 03 and 04, 09 and 10 as a fueler. I became a career counselor in 2012, and I went to Afghanistan as a career counselor in 2016. So that's my military story. I had 11 duty stations in my 21 years as well.
All over the place.
All over.
So how did you, what was that light bulb moment for you that said, more than anything, I just want to help others, not, guide them through their careers. A lot of times people end up getting out because of a bad duty station, a bad leader, and it's not really the right time for them to get out. What was that factor for you to take that avenue?
The way that sergeant looked at me and said, "You're going to go to Iowa, live in your in-laws' basement with your wife and kid, and go to school," that stuck out at me, because I was like, no, that's not what I'm going to do. But I literally told him we were going to stay with my in-laws for a little bit until we got established, and I was going to go and get my degree. And I could not get those words out of my head. I did not want to live there with my in-laws. I did not want to do that. So I had called branch, Germany. You call branch, and they said, "Oh yeah, re-enlist. Let us know when you re-enlist, and we'll put you on assignment out of Europe, because you have a DERO state. You can't leave, and you're an initial termer," and all these words. I had no clue. So I went and said, "Hey, I'm re-enlisting 4 years." And they're like, "For what?" And I said, "Option one." I talked to branch, and they said they were going to take care of me. And that's when corporal recruiter came up, and I got sent back to my home station. I mean, I was my recruiter's replacement.
That's always fun. They say, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
That same seat. No, that's awesome though. As a career counselor, like what were some of the biggest, takeaways for you in helping others? I'm sure you served, so many people in the Army, over the years, what was it, 11 years you said as a career counselor?
Yeah.
military, you touched hundreds of people. As that journey continued, what were some of the best moments, some of the hardest moments?
So I'll start with the hardest moments. The hardest moments was when you had that soldier who was just defeated. Good soldier, good leader, and they were just done. Like you said, bad leadership, toxicity in the ranks. Made one bad decision, one mistake, and it pulled them away from everything that they were good for. I mean, they were taking care of soldiers. Not being able to reenlist them or hear them tell me that they're getting out because of X, Y, and Z. Those were my hardest points because I know they were good people. And the worst part is now almost 3 years removed from retiring, I've realized how much I didn't know. So I didn't help them to the fullest. So I feel like I, as the career counselor, didn't give them every avenue that they had. I know there's TAP out there. I know, well, it was ACAP and TAP at the time, and I know there was resources for them. But as the transition guy and the reenlistment guy, I don't have all the answers. So I try to guide them the best. Where do you want to live? Have you looked up medium cost of living? Have you looked up jobs? Have you at least looked at the reserve or guard? Just, they had a family. You need insurance. You need something to fall back on in case it's not what you're expecting it to be. Those are my hardest decisions, is helping them walk away. The best were when those guys would come in and say, I'll only re-enlist if I can go to Monterey, California. And I send up a hotline that comes back and it's approved, and it's like, yes, now I'm the best career counselor out there. They tell all their friends and you get to do that. But connecting with the soldiers, being the leader that they can come into, sit in my chair and invent and not fear repercussions. Unless it was something that I had to report. They could come in my office and unload on first sergeant, unload on sergeant. Tell me what is going on. I could calm them down, and then we'd talk. And being that NCO to them, to every branch, every soldier in my formation, being that trustworthy guy that they could come to, and then being asked to come in and do their promotion. Promoting these guys in the E5 and E6. It was that meant a lot to me, having that recognition from them. So those are my best times, and still being reached out to now.
Yeah,
The
I'm
guys that
sure.
are coming out, finding me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and hitting me up after they've decided they're getting out or have a question, because I still have connections in the career counselor world, so I still help them as well.
How often did you come across soldiers that were like dead set on I'm getting out and don't have a plan? Like how often did that look like?
It was very rare that I met a soldier that was dead set on getting out that had a legitimate plan. It was very common that there was no plan. They were getting out for a reason, family reasons. They were getting out. My wife can't do this no more. My husband can't do this no more. We hate it here. We can't reenlist to get out of here. We've been in, those were all the reasons people were getting out. And they never had a plan. So I would try to interject and say, hey, what if I can reenlist you to get you closer to where you want to be so you can start that transition? How can I help you get there? So when you do transition, you have a better opportunity and setup for your spouse to get set up, your kids to get set up, get you closer to family. That was my pool because I hated seeing the guys that were getting out that had absolutely no plan. But that was oftentimes that was the exact plan. My favorite plan was the guy that was going to go to Maryland, live above a grocery store, and work on a fishing boat.
I'm sure
So
that happened. I'm sure that how that worked out.
I would love to know.
Me through SkillBridge and how that worked out for you, how you found them, how they found you, kind of like that whole process.
So DoD SkillBridge is Department of Defense SkillBridge internship program. Basically, it allows service members within their last 180 days of service to join a company that's been DoD approved with a memorandum of understanding to do this program as an intern. So they get to go work for the company in the position, and at the end of the opportunity, they may or may not have a job offer. So it's a way to get your foot in the door to get an actual job upon completing your service. So had I had that my first time when I was getting out and I found a role and I could go into it and had the hopes of getting a job, that would have definitely influenced my decision on staying in or getting out. And a lot of times gives you that eye opener that I'm not ready to get out and I need to reenlist for a little bit, or you don't get that job and you still have time and you can reenlist. So the Army has the Career Skills Program, which is the Army CSP. That was before DoD's was approved. So there are companies that are only approved through the Army CSP and don't have the DoD SkillBridge. Regardless, it's all an internship within the last 180 days. I found mine on a whim. My wife and I had been talking about getting out. Was it time for me to retire? I was rather high up on the Master Sergeant OML for the Order of Merit list, so there was a high likelihood that I was going to get promoted to Master Sergeant. I think I was number 23, and I didn't have Master Leaders course, and then they rescinded that you had to have that requirement, and so I was like, I'm going to get promoted if I don't drop my retirement, and I got a phone call. Someone had posted on Facebook about this opportunity with Leaf Home to become a corporate recruiter, and I reached out. Next thing I know, I got a phone call, and I was told, hey, we need you to start in November. This is July. So quick math, I have 9 months I can request, so I had to have my retirement drop by the end of July to retire May 1st, April 30th, and start the internship on mid-November. I think it was like November 17th. So I took a whim. I got the opportunity. It came at me, recruiting. And then when I got into the position, I found out that I was going to be helping service members get their SkillBridge or Army CSP opportunity and place them within our company. So I was getting to be a career counselor all over again.
All over
I
again.
was their plan.
Yeah.
So now, what state do you want to live in? What city do you want to live in? What do you want to do? I don't have experience in that, sir. What did you do in the military? What are the additional duties that you've had? So I'm able to show them what their job title is, but then what they really did in their job. So that's what I've been doing for the last just over 3 years, including my internship. And in March, it'll be 3 years full time. I received an offer at the end of my SkillBridge and accepted.
So you, even though you had a plan, even though you kind of essentially went from the job that you were doing, from being a career counselor into more of a corporate setting of career counseling and being that military liaison for the organization that you're working for, what were some of the struggles, if you will, if you had any, or, what were some of the big differences and things that you battled with, initially, from going from having to put on a uniform every day to now I've got, a polo and shirt or whatever it is. And, what did that look like for you, especially after 21 years of, having that uniform set every single day and just this way of life for 21 years. And then all of a sudden, very quickly, because like you mentioned, you had a quick turnaround from dropping your packet to starting this internship and then going on with this company. Like, walk me through some of that.
I lost my military family. That was the hardest part. I moved from Fort Hood, now Fort Cavazos, Texas, moved to Southwest Florida. I got a remote job, so I didn't have to leave. I don't have to do anything. I'm on a computer. I do all my interviews through LinkedIn, Facebook, a LinkedIn recruiter, referrals, word of mouth, jumping in with other organizations. So that was my only outlet to the military. I don't have I don't have neighbors. I don't have the uniform to put on anymore. That was my hardest transition, was realizing that what I've known and what I've done for the last 21 years, I'm not doing that anymore. So that was probably my hardest part of the entire transition. But my company has been amazing in listening to my ideas. So our entire team is configured of prior military. So we have Army First Sergeant from Recruiting Command, retired Staff Sergeant from Recruiting Command, myself, that's a career counselor with recruiting experience, and then a Navy recruiter. So we have everybody in our team has military background, so we understand what's going on with the military and what they're looking for. But what it does is, I said, why aren't we going to these career fairs? Why aren't we in these people's faces at these job fairs? Why aren't we partnering with X, Y, and Z company? And they said, well, can you do it? And I started making some connections and networking, and now I'm actively attending career fairs. MacDill Air Force Base is tomorrow. Jacksonville Naval Air Station is Friday. Fort Hood and Fort Cavazos, Texas is next week on the 27th and 28th. I come back and I go to Nellis and Creech Air Force Base out in Vegas the 10th and 11th of February. And then at the end of March, I'll be at Camp Lejeune and Cherry Point up in North Carolina for the Marines. So they've opened that door to give me that sense of now I get to be around my military people. I get to get on that base and I get to talk to them. And there's quite a few times on the Army bases I know the career counselor and the guys come up without a plan and I send them right back to the career counselor. And I've had a few of them re-enlist. I've made some phone calls. I got some guys that are sergeant majors now in the career field, and they were able to get them certain locations, and they ended up re-enlisting because I'm still a career counselor. I'm still wanting to take care of that soldier.
Yeah, I think for you and what you do with your current company with Leaf Home and having those connections and doing those career fairs and the job fairs on base and working with active duty members, it's just a huge service that you get to provide all the time because you have so much knowledge in both sectors to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, hey, look, you're not ready to get out. You need to stay in for a couple more years and do these things to prepare yourself to getting out, and then also pointing them in the right direction, or hey, here's this opportunity. And I think for so many that even within the different SkillBridge or Hire Our Hero programs, a lot of times you find yourself with somebody that hasn't served or doesn't have that career counselor background from a military standpoint, and sometimes they fall a little bit flat. They have great intentions, but they fall a little bit flat because they don't have the resources that you do. And I think it's extremely commendable that you have so many resources and so much knowledge in both sides.
Yeah, it's been hard because I got a lot of people that I know in the civilian sector, and they want to know, hey, why are you successful? Why is your team successful? Well, I travel with 17 other recruiters. We call ourselves the recruiting nomads, and we travel all around. We met at career fairs. We all have different specialties. We all have different locations. We all have different things that we're looking for. So when we come across somebody, we share that information. We always let that person know, yeah, what does Leaf Home need? What do I need? That's my focus is, but if I can't help them, and I know one of my nomads can, I'm going to pass them off. And that also brings me that sense. Like when we go out to Fort Cavazos, we're all meeting up and going to have dinner together. We go up to Cherry Point and Camp Lejeune, we always meet up and have dinner together. We chat and we share information, VA information, any resumes or applicants that are looking. We always share those things so we can always network and have those points of contact. So it's great. It's an easy void that I get to fill by helping others and working with these other companies. And then when the civilians ask me, because they're all prior military or military spouses in my group. And when you talk to somebody that's a civilian that wants to set up this program, first thing I tell them is you need someone prior military, recruiter, career counselor, or has a good background, first sergeant or higher, that can run your program because they have base access. They can get into those TAP offices and they can assist with that transition, not just recruit for the job. Because if I'm just out there recruiting, I lose all my credibility. But if I'm helping with transition, along with helping them find that SkillBridge opportunity or CSP opportunity, I get more credibility. So I always give my candidates an hour. The first 30 minutes, 45 minutes, we're talking about the job opportunity. At the end of the call, I open it up for questions on transition, help with VA, help with anything that they have additional. Whether they're going to move forward in the process or not, I always take that time with every one of my candidates to go.
That's amazing. It's also really neat to see such a big network, even though you guys, you're 17, 20 people, but it's still a big network of people that are in different verticals and different industries and kind of working together, even though y'all are in your own companies looking for your own, folks to put into jobs, but, still working together to share those resumes or those candidates that come across your desk that might not be a great fit for your organization. And it might be, and not necessarily because they're not a great fit for what you're looking for, but because of what they are looking for in their future might be a better fit for somebody else in your network. I could never understand this in the civilian world as a recruiter, because even when I recruited my last couple of years in the Army, I would have somebody walk in the door and say X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, we're not the branch for you. Let me walk you over to the Navy office or to the Air Force office, or, and always share those candidates, because of based off of what they were looking for. you know, and then they would do the same as you start to build those networks. You would get, someone would throw you a bone because, they weren't the right fit for their branch, but they were better, for what your branch. I could never understand why in the civilian world, why we don't do that as recruiters, why we don't network enough and say, hey, I saw you have a job opening. I've got a great candidate for you. They applied to one of my jobs, and then, pick up the phone and say, hey, do you want me to send your resume over to this company? Yes or no. But recruiters don't work like that, at all in the civilian world. It's so funny.
It's a dog eat dog world. I mean, I don't know. I don't get hyped up on it. Like, we can jump it. It goes back to sense of purpose.
Mhm.
Every recruiter has a sense of purpose. We all do the job that we do because we love what we do and we love that opportunity, or we're good at it. I'm not saying all inclusively, but military personnel that are in these types of roles, we care more about the individual and the person succeeding and moving through because, like you said, I'm going to pass one to you, you're going to pass one to me. I can help this one person out, they're going to tell 10 of their friends. I'm going to make a post on LinkedIn, I'm going to make a post on Facebook, and they're going to validate that my post is legit and that I'm going to help them. So that's why we do it, because in the military, that's what it was about. Like you said, in recruiting, the Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps worked amazing together. The Navy guy wasn't around enough, so he didn't benefit from our networking together. But we were networking all the time in recruiting. The guy that didn't score high enough on the ASVAB, we had the other option open. The Marine Corps' ASVAB scores lowered, or a law violation, or tattoos, or whatever. You
Exactly.
always move that through. And I've brought that into my civilian career because I know I can't get them all, but if I can help them get in somewhere else, I know eventually it's going to come back to me as well.
Walk me through SkillBridge. If I was looking to, exit the military and I was going through the TAP program, or whatever, what does that process look like, from a SkillBridge standpoint? How do I go in and get information? How do I apply? Is it based off of your location for the job or for where you're stationed? And also, because of where you're stationed, is there only certain types of jobs, or is it open to across America? Walk me through that a little bit, if you will.
Yeah, so I'll try to make it as least complicated as possible. Every branch has their own method. Air Force has a system, of course. They put it up into the system. It goes to the education center. Each place is a digital footprint. As it goes up, gets approved, sends back. I get an email saying they've been approved or disapproved and the reason why. Candidate then sends me the approval. But every branch is different. So most companies, I will start looking for people that are a year out from separation because then I can get the conversation started and find those answers out to what you asked. Are you staying in the Fort Carson, Colorado area? Are you open for moving? What locations? Give me your top three. I can find those out early, and then I can start talking about their jobs, their MOSs, their AFSCs, their rate, whatever they've done. And then I can peel that onion back even further and find out, did you work in the orderly room? Did you do inventory? What was their additional duties that a lot of these service members won't think that that goes onto a resume. They won't think to put on that they worked in the orderly room and did the admin or did this because they don't see it as viable to their MOS or their AFSC or their rate. So I try to peel those onions back. So I started about a year from ETS is when I really engage people. At about the 10-month mark is when we'll start actually making them offers. So they can start within the next 4 months. So right at that 180-day mark. That's when we'll do it. Now, depending on your company, obviously at Leaf Home, we have a pretty good formula set up. I mean, 3 years ago, we started with about 4 positions. Right now, we're offering about 18 to 22 positions through our SkillBridge and CSP opportunity. We have our own detailed job plan for each of those that goes out based on the timeline that the soldier or the service member is doing. So we get them in there. We find them on the SkillBridge site. So we are listed on the SkillBridge site as an official DoD participant. There's also Career PCS, which has listed, it's kind of an easier place for companies to go and list all of their stuff. 50 Strong, Hiring Our Heroes, so many great organizations out there, Seven Eagle Group, that list people that are authorized SkillBridge providers. Once you find what you want to do, honestly, the easiest way is to get on LinkedIn and search for SkillBridge. If you're a candidate getting out, get on Facebook and find the SkillBridge network. There's 63,000 of us in that group alone, started by a retired career counselor from the Air Force. Get in there and just post what you want. Say who you are, what you did, how long you served, the location, and what you want. And a recruiter will find you, or you will be directed to a recruiter. One of us will be tagged. That's how it starts, the word of mouth. Now, in your TAP offices, it's kind of the same way as networking online. Those CSP coordinators for the Army and the TAP officials, the SkillBridge officials for the other branches, they will have a list of the companies that have reached out to them, come to their career fairs, left them pamphlets, emailed them information, and those are the ones that they're going to direct you to because those are the ones that they know of. So it's all about networking. That's why it's so important for me to get to every career fair that I can, because I want my information given out to those service members. So it's really open to the service member. If a service member tells me I'm open to relocate, I'm going to ask them, do you want to go to our corporate headquarters in Ohio? And okay, let's do it. So once they've made the commitment that they're good with the role and everything that I talked about, the location, the time frame, based on their leave, based on filing their BDD claim, try to discourage anybody from doing a full 180 days. Most branches don't allow it anymore um, because they got that 180s when they can file their BDD claim. And getting that VA claim filed at day 180 is so essential. And then make sure you have time to take leave. There's a lot of guys that think they want to run their SkillBridge or CSP until their ETS date or retirement date and then get out, not realizing they have about 3 to 10 days, sometimes 2 months before they get their last paycheck. They might not get a job offer in their SkillBridge or CSP, and now they have nothing. Always end that before, so you at least have a 30-day leave time frame, maybe longer. So we work with them based on years of service, job positions. I've done as little as 83 days. I think my smallest one was 67 days, and he's still full-time with us. We offered him the full-time job, and he's excelling very well. He'll actually be with me at Fort Cavazos as my direct hire recruiter. And the most we've done is we've done a 180, but we try to stay right around that 120 to 150 range. So it comes down to every company is different. As long as they are approved through the DoD SkillBridge program or the Army CSP opportunity, the service member is going to get briefed on our program. They're going to get briefed on how the DoD expects it, the new changes, if it's remote, if it's outside of 50 miles, who has to sign off on it. It's just about learning the knowledge of you're going to go out and you're going to show out and you're going to do a 40-hour week job. And you're going to make that decision. One, is this job for me? Do these people fit with my personality and my lifestyle? Is this really where I want to live?
Mm-hmm.
And I try to encourage people, if you're looking for some place to go, make sure you look at that area for other jobs that are available. Just because I put you in a SkillBridge there doesn't mean, like I used to tell people in the Army, the Army is not for everybody and everybody's not for the Army. Leaf Home's not for everybody and everybody's not for Leaf Home. So we might not be the fit or the job that you're wanting, but if there's somebody in that area that is hiring, you can always be reaching out or looking. That way, if you don't get an offer from us or you don't accept an offer from us, which is 9 times out of 10, that's most likely what happens. They find something else or they don't want to work that hard for their paycheck. Find something in that area so you're not moving again. Find a location you can see yourself settling down in, and then let's go from there. And that's really the biggest thing, is location. The job is going to come. You probably have experience. Most of our non-Army recruiters or Navy recruiters are better recruiters than our retired or prior service recruiters from the service. So it's not a sales game in our recruiting world. We're helping people get hired for jobs and making sure they meet the criteria.
Right.
So non-recruiters have really good success being recruiters in our field. We have non-supply guys or logistics guys that are doing really good as installation managers and assistant installation managers. So it's all about how you present yourself and how you interview. I do informational interviews after hours as well. So I'll talk to people that are trying to get into certain locations, and I'll do informational interviews with them, review their resume, and help them any way I can. I'll look at the job description and show them things they can add to their resume that they might not have thought of. So it's all encompassing when I do it.
I say this all the time, and I don't think people realize this enough, or they don't do the research enough, but everybody, when they're getting out, they have this whole vision in their head of like, hey, I'm getting out, I'm moving here, it might be back to their hometown, whatever the case may be. And they have, this unrealistic expectation of, I've already got something lined up. I'm ready to go. I've got, I've got everything in order. I've checked every box, it's going to work out perfectly when I get there. And then they find out very quickly that that's not the case. And I can't stress this enough, but it's not just about the job that you're looking for, but it's also about the markets for the job that you're looking for. Is that town, that you're moving to, or do they have the job market for the 1, 3, 5 different jobs that you want to transfer into, or you're looking at going into? And what does that market look like? Also looking at what does the cost of living in that market look like? All these things that, we take for granted in the military, because we're going to get paid, on the 1st and the 15th, or what was it, the 1st and 15th?
Yeah,
I've
first and
been out for so long now, but you're going to get paid regardless on those days. You're going to get BAH based off, if you're living off post and have a house and family, you're going to get BAH based off of, the cost of living for that base. And we quickly forget, or we didn't even realize that those are the things, like those things that we have that are taking place. And then we get out and then we realize, like, oh man, like the cost of living is more expensive in this area, or there's not even the job field that, I want to, go into in this area. I was talking to a guy the other day that went back to a border town here in Texas. And, he went while he was still he got his degree in engineering, in mechanical engineering. And I'm like, well, why'd you move back to a border town in Texas when you should have found a spot that has a lot of different types of engineering jobs, that is, maybe Houston or, California, something like that, where you have more opportunity than going back. Cause then all you're going to end up doing is going back home, realizing that you're not going to find the work that you were looking for, and end up having to move again and start all over again. Or you're going to fall into a position where you're just going to take whatever you find, because you need to find something to keep putting, food on the table and keep the bills paid, and, all those things. It's just so important to do the research on the market, the job market, the area.
Yes, I tell people all the time, treat your ETS and retirement as your last PCS. Take that opportunity to research it. You
Yeah.
ask for it, you go to branch, you say, hey, can you put me in Hawaii? Can you put me in Fort Riley, Kansas, or wherever? Find that location and PCS there, and go all in like we did in the military. We made it work. Our spouses found work or they stayed at home. We reviewed the schools. Which school do we want to open enroll our kids to? Do we put them on base? What's in the area that I can drive to that's accessible? Cost of living's huge. Property taxes. Veterans benefits. You can break it down on the VA site by state. Chat GPT. What are the veterans benefits for the state of Florida? What are the veterans benefits for the state of Alabama versus Florida? It'll give you the link to give you the side by side. There's so many things out there that people don't think of when they turn down that opportunity in Hudson, Ohio, or they only want to go to San Antonio, Texas, but I have a job in Corpus Christi. How far from the location are you willing to drive? Oh, I'll drive an hour. Until you're driving an hour every day.
Yeah.
Certain things that we did in the military, we say we're going to keep doing them because it's bred into us. Once you're out, you don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
You did that because the Army told you had to.
Right. Right. I think a lot of times too, people, they do this particular job for 10, 8, 10, 12, 15 years in the military. And then getting out, their plan is to continue within that field And then realizing very quickly, once that uniform came off, like, I didn't really like that job anyways. That was just my job, the job that I
Well,
chose.
not only that, they have an inflated sense of what their salary is going to be.
Yeah.
That's the biggest one. Yes, there are jobs out there that are going to land you six figures right out the gate. It's going to be hard to find them. You got a network. You're going to be in applications with hundreds and hundreds of people. But don't be afraid to be humbled and start at entry level.
Right.
You go to entry level and go in there and show out. They're going to notice and they're going to promote you. This isn't the Army. You don't have to go to the board. You don't have to get numbers. You don't have to get points. You don't have to take a test. Show them what you can do. I started in my company way lower than I expected to be making when I got out. I've showed them what I can do. They've taken confidence and faith in me. They've promoted me. And now my salary is about where I wanted it to be when I got out 3 years ago. But it took me 3 years to get there.
To get there.
And that's fine. It's growing. But when you think about it, what salary do you want? And what are you willing to do to work for that salary? Are you willing to put in 80 hours a week? Are you willing to take that call at 9 o'clock at night because you have a service member in Japan that's the only time they're available to do a call? Are you willing to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and take that call from the service member, in Guam or Germany or wherever? That's what I do because I want to make it as easy for that service member as possible and then find out if we can help them. So it just goes back to helping people, man. I can talk about it forever.
But no, you hit on something that is crucial, because what a lot of people expect from a compensation standpoint is so much different from what the civilian world is doing. And based off of experience, and you're competing against other people now for those particular jobs, to get your foot in the door. And I mean, for me, like, I'll be honest with you, I've been in this field, in the corporate field, for 11 years now, 11 some change. And it wasn't until probably year 9 where I started making six figures from a salary standpoint, not with a salary plus bonus and commission component to it, but from a salaried standpoint. It wasn't until about year 9 that I was making six figures. But I'll be very honest with you. My first job when I got out of the military, I was making $12.50 an hour as a entry-level recruiter in 2014 with 2 kids that I had to pay child support on. It was a kick in the face. I was back living in the same room that I grew up in, going, in high school. That was my room in high school, living under my parents' house. And prior to that, this was in 2014, but prior to that, I had been out of the house for almost 10 years. I was a staff sergeant. I had my own house and a wife and kids, and unfortunately we got divorced. And, that was the biggest reason why I ended up getting out, was to make sure that I come home to be there for my kids. But it was a kick in the face to, not only be making $12.50 an hour, but to be going from a job where I am being told what to do by some 20-year-old that just graduated college that has no real life experience. And all of a sudden I've got to stay at work until 8 o'clock because they said I have to stay at work until 8 o'clock. And making $12.50 an hour. Like, I was barely surviving, but it was getting my foot in the door, and then going out to one of our facilities where we had an on-site presence with Caterpillar. And I ended up taking over the entire shop, and then 5 other shops with that, because I ended up seeing where we were missing opportunity and poking holes in it, and then rewriting the way we went out and recruited, taking some of that old school military Army style recruiting and doing area canvassing. And it was real funny. I shared this a couple of weeks ago, but it was real funny. My first day out there, when they asked me to go help, the first day I said, "What do you want me to do?" They said, here's a call sheet. Just start calling. I said, "Perfect. I know a call sheet." And I just start picking up the phone, and I get somebody on the phone, and I start qualifying them. Are they qualified for this job? Yada, yada, yada. And then before I got off the phone, "Hey, who do you know? Who else do you know that can use this opportunity?" And I started just, I ended up bringing in like 5 or 6 people in one sitting. They're like, "How'd you do that?" And so quickly was able to prove like why I was out there, why I could do this job, and then wrote out an SOP that got adopted across the nation, and then started moving my way up. But I had setback after setback after setback. When COVID hit, corporate recruiting went down the drain, and starting over again. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that it takes time to get to that salary that you're trying to obtain. And for some people, they walk out the door and they walk into a job and they're making that six figures. But I would say it's probably 1% of all, probably less than 1% of all
Yeah.
military members that get out of the service.
And my biggest thing, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
I know what it takes to have a six-figure salary. I don't have one, but I know what it takes to get to one. And you also got to think, you're leaving a position as a senior leader, and you're going to walk into a mid-level to senior level leadership. But you're not in charge anymore. You're not in charge of 10,000 people anymore. You're not in charge of every service member. You don't walk into a room and people get scared when you walk in or jump to parade rest. Now you're just John or Joe, and that job that you have today might not be there tomorrow. And that's the thing that a lot of these guys don't understand. And when they're posting, they don't hire veterans and they're not veteran friendly. Well, we're going to talk to you as a veteran, but a veteran shouldn't identify who you are as a workforce person. What are you going to do as an employee for the company? And that's hard to get through to some of the senior leaders that I've talked to. I do have 206s installing gutters in South Texas because they didn't want to sit behind a desk anymore. They didn't want to be in a position of leadership. They wanted to work with their hands and make a little money. I have guys that come out and say, if I make 50 or 60,000 a year, I'll be good. Tell me what to do, when to do it, and let me go home. Don't put me in charge. You just got to find where you truly want to be. And I think a lot of people get this misconception that if they're not at $100 or plus $1,000 a year, that they're not successful in what they do. You can be successful at $65,000 a year. You can be successful at $250,000 a year. It's what you do that you're going to deem as you being successful.
Right.
So
and there's also a component to it that you're not that you don't recognize, and not you, but people don't recognize in general until you get out, and that is what is work-life balance. Because when you start adding more and more and more to that salary, your responsibilities also come with that salary. And so what is important to you from a work-life balance standpoint? Is it the dollar signs and working, like you said, 80 hours a week, taking those calls, at all different hours of the day? I led a global team for a company for a while, and I had recruiters all over the world. And there were times I'm jumping out of bed at 3:00 in the morning to take a call from, Japan or from India or from, or working, until midnight just so I can have time with the team in Australia. And so, you start to realize like how quickly that you can deter, and how work-life balance is so important to you and your family. But you didn't realize like what that really actually meant or looked like, because you're accustomed to a certain way. You're accustomed to, certain way of life, being in the field, or having a 3-day weekend, once a month or whatever the case may be, right? And like not having those things anymore, and then going into the corporate world, it's a huge difference than, what you were accustomed to. What advice do you have for guys, from junior enlisted all the way up? If there's like a set, a checklist or set of rules that you would say would help you find success, what would that look like?
start networking now. I laughed at LinkedIn all the way until I retired. I mean, I didn't have LinkedIn until I was in my CSP program. Get on the SkillBridge sites on Facebook. Find those veterans organizations. Know what you want to do. Know what you can afford to do. If you leave, whether you get out retired, medically retired, have a disability, nothing is guaranteed except for a retirement pension. So if you get the retirement pension, can you survive on that? Is that going to be able for you to succeed? How hard do you want to work, and where do you want to be at? Do you want to continue to move up the ladder and take over CFO, COO, CEO of a company? Or are you pretty content just being a supervisor or manager, making a decent salary, and having that work-life balance? You don't get 30 days of leave. You don't gain 2.5 days every month. You might get unlimited PTO. You might get 2 weeks of PTO, which is paid time off. You might you have to request it. You still got to ask for permission to take that vacation. Sick days. If you're not salaried and you're hourly, know the difference in that paycheck. Your paychecks aren't going to be the same. I get paid weekly. And that was the hardest adjustment for me, was getting paid every Friday from the 1st and the 15th, rearranging how my bills got paid and rearranging how I made it through that month. So just know that there is no checklist. There's checklists all out there. Get life insurance before you get a disability rating. Get life insurance before you get a disability rating. Research the SBP if you're retiring. The survivor's benefit plan. Make sure you do your research on that. Follow those key people, those key leaders on LinkedIn. Reach out to them, follow them, interact with them. Send a message before you talk to them. Send a message and introduce yourself, what you're looking for. That will get you into that network. All of a sudden, you get a call with one of them, and they find a job for you. They introduce you to somebody. There's no magic wand that's just going to give it to you. Reach out. Be open to criticism. If you send me your resume, I am going to tell you what's wrong with it. If I have time, I'm going to revamp it and send it back to you. I did that one time. Senior leader in the Pentagon sent me his resume. I annihilated it. It was all military. I fixed it. I made it presentable, 2-page resume. Sent it out to a couple of my other recruiters and said, hey, which one do you like better? They helped me make some changes to the one that I designed. Sent it to him. And the guy did not take our criticism well. It was very polite. And 7 months after he told me how he felt about me reassigning his resume, he reached out again to ask me if I would be willing to help him because he hasn't been able to land a job and get into a SkillBridge or anything. So we talked again and revamped his resume again to help him get started. So there's no checklist. There's not. Hardest lesson, because that's kind of what this leads into. Not only does it lead into what checklist, no matter what you did in the Army, in the Navy, in the Marine Corps, wherever, you are a number. And once you leave, you will be replaced. If they deny your SkillBridge because of manning, because of not having a replacement, that's the command being selfish because you do your job so well. If you were to break your leg or go on convalescent leave or have an emergency come up, you would leave for 30 days and they would replace you. When you leave the Army, the military in a whole, I always reference the Army because that's what I was. You're a number, they're going to replace you. So make sure you take care of yourself and make sure you take care of your family going forward. Because when you make that decision to ETS or retire, now it's about you. Yes, the command is going to want you to be there. They're going to say how important you are and how essential you are. The day you leave, they forget your name. If you don't have that community, the family that you build will always be there, but it'll be different because they're still serving. Connect with those that have retired, connect with those that have ETS'd. It's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing that I learned from getting out.
Yeah. Oh, appreciate that. Joe, it's been a pleasure having you on. Before we go, what is Leaf Home? Where can we find you? Where can veterans look for you, or transitioning military look for you? I know you're on LinkedIn. I'll put a plug at the bottom of the podcast. But where else can we find you? Where can we reach out? What does Leaf Home do if they're interested in joining Leaf Home?
LinkedIn and Facebook are the best spots to find me. On Facebook, I'm in the SkillBridge network group, all over there. I'm in a lot of the 92 Yankee, 92 Alpha Facebooks as well, because I like to find the logistics specialist and the supply guys. I do have my messages turned on, so if you find me on Facebook, you can message me, and it comes up in my regular inbox. It doesn't go to a separate box. So I do answer those messages, but LinkedIn is really it. I don't have IG. I don't post on TikTok. I follow some influencers on TikTok just because I try to help anybody I can and find some really good podcasts on there as well. There you go. There's a plug for you, John.
We found each other here on TikTok.
Yes. And Leaf Home. LeafHome.com is where you find us. And you find me, I'm advocating for Leaf Home. If you search Leaf Home on LinkedIn for posts, you're probably going to pull me up. I tag them in every one of my posts. Look up Leaf Home on Facebook and you'll probably find some of my posts. Leaf Home is better known as Leaf Filter Gutter Protection Services. So Leaf Filter Gutter was designed in, I believe it was 2005. We always say in a basement in Ohio. It was in his parents' garage in Hudson, Ohio. Developed the filters that go over top of your gutters. Leaf Home has now encompassed Leaf Filter, and we have Leaf Home Safety Solutions, Leaf Home Water Solutions, Leaf Home Shower Bath, Leaf Home Enhancements, all these different variables. We make home ownership easy. So whether it's from foundation repair to putting a new walk-in tub or shower, safety rails in those showers, chair lifts going up and down the stairs. We've installed, I think in the 3 years I've been here, I think we've installed about 10 to 15 chair lifts for veterans for free on Veterans Day to assist them. We have a Vet Connect committee. I'm the vice president of the committee. We actually have our meeting next week to start going over what our plans are for this calendar year. We foster an environment where every quarter we have a Warrior Award. One veteran within the company is nominated by their supervisor or manager or by one of us, and we nominate them for doing commendable work, going above and beyond, and being a warrior within our organization. We work with Colleague Racing, who Matt Colleague is the founder of Leaf Home. We work with them doing Memorial Day events with the Coca-Cola 600. We'll design a t-shirt, we'll sell it within our organization to the companies. Sometimes we'll open it up to public, and then we'll send all those proceeds to a nonprofit that cover military. I have conducted a reenlistment ceremony at the Coca-Cola 600 2 years in a row now. We're already working on year 3, where I bring service members and their families out to the pits, out to the hauler cars. They get to meet the drivers, hang out in the pits VIP, and they do a reenlistment ceremony.
That's amazing.
So that we connect like that. Leaf Home is so veteran culture. It's just a great place to work. It's the most military thing that I found outside the military. My team is very tight knit. The people that I hire are from the military. They go into the SkillBridge opportunity. Whether they take the offer or get made an offer, all of them still spread our word to other people because they know the culture that we foster within Leaf, and we're very transparent. There's not going to be a head count at the end of this, so I don't want to offer you a position into the SkillBridge. There's a high likelihood there will be a head count, but nothing's guaranteed except for your work ethic. And then every quarter we bring people in. Last quarter we had ended with Sergeant Major Alan Myers of the National Guard. He works out of the Pentagon as the high-ranking Sergeant Major for all the National Guard recruiting and retention effort. Had him come in and talk about some different things because we have a lot of recruiters in our organization. Army, Navy, Marines, but we also have just regular recruiters. So hearing how the Army and the National Guard operate, like you said, you take a lot of those attributes from the Army recruiting into your civilian workforce, the way it works. We bring in VA representatives. We do this on company time, and we'll have the CHRO, we'll have the CEO, we'll have high management jump onto these calls and talk to us, and it's all for the veterans. So I love everything that Leaf Home has done for me. They designed this program, they designed this team, and they allowed me to be a part of it. So now I try to help anybody I can to come a part of this team and see the culture that we fostered within Leaf Home. Because not only great products, great recruiters, great install managers, great teams, but that veteran family that we have, that veteran connect that we got, the committee, and building that from scratch. My boss has done an amazing job bringing it together. Bringing me on board was just a bonus, a blessing that I have because I'm a part of that percentage that has been in the same company since I retired. I've never had another job. I left the Army and I came to this. And a lot of the guys in Leaf Home are in that same position.
Of it. That's amazing. That's amazing to find such an organization that has such a presence in the veteran community. You know, one of there's many out there, but you guys stand out amongst the crowd for sure. And what you guys are doing for veterans. Before we go, real quick, what was your favorite duty station?
Germany was my favorite duty station. I was stationed in 1 Cav, Büdingen, Germany. Loved it.
I would have guessed that. Favorite MRE?
My favorite MRE is always beef stew number 9.
Beef stew. Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's a good one though. I'm not gonna complain. Chili Mac all the way for me. I'll fight somebody over some Chili Mac. In fact, I have a friend of mine who I coach with. We coach softball together, and she was on. She's a reservist, and she had to go, or she's a reservist. She had to go to Florida for a couple of months. And I was like, hey, while you're out there in Florida, go find me a Chili Mac MRE and bring it back. And she didn't. So she's about to get benched from my coaching. Joe, it is a pleasure having you on. We'll have to have you on again in the future. I think you just have so much knowledge, so much to share, so much, that you're doing for the community, for the veteran community. Leaf Home is definitely lucky to have you on that team. And I'm fortunate enough to have met you through TikTok. So give a shout out to President Trump for making sure he came back for a little while.
Heck yeah.
But just thank you so much for taking the time to be here and sharing with us, all the great things that you've done within your community. Share your story, how you got there. I think it's so crucial for people to hear. Part of From Boots to Suits isn't to say, hey, here's the how-to guide to go do it. There are so many people that have done it in so many different ways. There's no right way to get to where you're going, but here is just a bunch of tools to put in your tool belt. Here's a bunch of stories to put, so that you can start, putting those things in as you're going through them, like, oh, I remember, this person said this or this person said that. And I think it's just going to be an amazing thing as we continue to build this community. But thank you so much for being here. We greatly appreciate your time. For all you, we'll see you on the next episode. Make sure that you share, like, subscribe, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and on Spotify. Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.